brought the heat with you, Matt.
Telling you, enjoying this heat wave.
Just a reminder that if you want to have public comment, to sign up on the sheet there. And today we are going to have a discussion on cities, Florence's union ditch shares, and that will be city council, city staff discussion. And if you think you might have questions afterwards, you could sign up there for the 3-minute public comment, and we can incorporate it all that way too. Okay, and just one more reminder, a couple other people came in since I made the last one. Our discussion item today on Florence's water shares and all that will be between the council and city staff. And if you want to ask questions afterwards, we could integrate the two because public comment comes up after that. So if you think you might want to be asking some questions, make sure you sign in at the sheet right there. Call the regular meeting of Florence City Council to order, Monday, February 3rd. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Counselor Van Houten, Counselor Stiefel,
Here.
Counselor Mergelman,
Here.
Counselor Gardner,
Here.
Counselor Stone,
Here.
Counselor McKinnon, Mayor Wolf.
Here. First item, discussion of the City of Florence's union ditch shares. Just want to make clear that this discussion is about our ditch shares and like our water portfolio and how it relates to the City of Florence. It does not have anything to do with the infrastructure of the union ditch itself. That's a union ditch board matter. But I think it's real important that all of us have a real good understanding of this water issue here. Okay, thank you. City Manager.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. As the Mayor stated, staff wanted to take some time today to discuss the city's union ditch shares with you. I'm going to do this in a bit of a question-answer format, so I will ask my own questions and then answer them for you. And then if Council has additional questions at the end, I'd be happy to try to answer them, or if we can't get the answer right now, to get the answer from our water attorney and get it to you at a later time. So Does the city own the Union Ditch? No. The city does not own the Union Ditch and has no responsibility with regard to the Union Ditch beyond that of any other shareholder, proportional to the amount of shares that we own. What is the city's relationship with Union Ditch? The city is a shareholder for Union Ditch. Why does the city purchase shares of Union Ditch? The city purchases Union Ditch shares to secure water availability for current and anticipated future municipal water needs. So, is the city the largest shareholder in Union Ditch? No. Everaz, a leading North American producer of engineered steel products, whose Everaz Rocky Mountain Steel facility is located in Pueblo, Colorado, is the largest shareholder in Union Ditch by a significant amount, with more than 4 times the amount of shares the city of Florence has. Does the city have enough Union Ditch shares? Yes and no. The city has enough Union Ditch shares for our current water needs. However, the city currently has fewer water shares than what we would require were all previously promised taps to be installed and utilized. What happens if the city doesn't have enough Union Ditch shares? While our water needs are currently being met, we are concerned that projected future needs must be accounted for moving forward, and we cannot speculate on when private development of these previously promised taps may occur. While the current developers of these properties may not be making significant progress on their development at this time, said developments could be sold to a new developer at any time, and this could change, and the city would potentially be in a deficit in terms of share ownership. This also means there are not enough shares for additional unknown potential growth if full build-out of currently promised developments were to occur. Why doesn't the city purchase other types of shares? The city of Florence has the oldest municipal water right on the Arkansas River in the state of Colorado by virtue of its Union Ditch shares. While there are other water rights with more seniority, these are held by individuals and are insignificant in comparison to the total water right held by the Union Ditch. From a practical standpoint, it is fair to say that the Union Ditch is as close to an uninterruptible water right as would be possible for the city of Florence to obtain. Because of this, the city tries to purchase Union Ditch shares to meet current and present and future needs as said shares become available. Should the city need to utilize other sources for water, the seniority dates for said water could be junior to those of the Union Ditch. What this means is, were a call on the river to occur, the city's Union Ditch rights may be in priority, but its other rights may be junior to those of the entity making the call. If the junior rights in question are necessary to provide for the municipal water needs of Florence and the regional water system, it would be difficult to parse out what properties are tied to what shares and who is entitled to water from the municipal system. So long as Union Ditch shares remain available periodically, it is in the best interest of the city of Florence to attempt to obtain them when possible. How many shares does the city even need? As stated previously, the city does not currently have enough shares to account for full build-out of all promised development. The master plan process and the current water share adjudication case will help to determine approximately how many shares the city may ultimately need, though this could vary based on multiple factors, including if an industry that requires heavy water usage were to be developed within the city limits. I've heard a lot recently about the city converting shares from agricultural to municipal use. Can you tell me more about this? When the city purchases Union Ditch shares, they go through Colorado Water Court. This is a lengthy legal process involving outside regulatory agencies, which converts the usage of shares from agricultural to municipal. Does the city ever condemn shares? To the best of staff's knowledge, the city of Florence has never condemned shares of the Union Ditch. Some municipalities have condemned or attempted to condemn shares of various water rights not outside the Union Ditch in order to convert them to municipal use. The city of Florence has never discussed taking this course of action to obtain shares to current staff's knowledge. Who else depends on Union Ditch shares? Those who own Union Ditch shares can utilize said shares for agricultural purposes. This is not a function the city is involved in or polices in any way. What about bulk water? The city currently offers bulk water for sale, which individuals may utilize as they wish. Were the city to run into a water shortage of any kind, the city would cease bulk water sales prior to initiating any other water conservation methods, as the needs of the municipal and regional water system are paramount. For example, were full build-out to occur with our current shares, the city would likely be unable to continue offering bulk water sales to outside customers. I've heard the city takes all the water in Union Ditch. Tell me more about this. This is untrue. The city has an allotment of water, currently 7.6 CFS, which it pulls from. Some of this water, 1.5 CFS, is allocated to the Sumo Golf Course via the original development agreement with Sumo. Even when the city is pumping around the clock and at peak demand, we seldom take our full allotment of Union Ditch water at this time. Tell me more about cash in lieu of shares. The fourth addendum to the Agreement on Water Tap Fees, part of the Regional Water Agreement since May 1st, 2023, lists the cash in lieu value of shares at $2,500 per share. The purpose of accepting cash in lieu of shares is to acknowledge that shares are not always readily available for developer purchase, and to allow the developer to provide money for shares that the city may then put aside for the purchase of future shares when said shares should become available. It should be noted that this addendum is currently under review in order to place additional guardrails on the process. The city recently accepted $18,500 in lieu of shares from Jay Stoner to account for the approval of increased density in the Willow Creek project, necessitating a switch to 1-inch taps, which required additional shares to be provided to the city as part of the tap fee, per the regional water and other related agreements regarding tap fees and shares. The city typically purchases shares at private sale, the largest and most recent example of this being the Carmelo Dairy shares, purchased after the city was approached by the shareholders. However, on September 27, 2024, the Union Ditch published a public notice that 2 ditch shares would be offered for sale by sealed bid, with the highest bidder being awarded the share. As the city had not had the opportunity to purchase shares via sealed bid for a minimum of 10 years, the city had no reliable means of measuring what the cost of said shares may be via sealed bid. Additionally, even if trending were available, the cost may fluctuate based on supply and demand for shares. As such, I, as the city manager, made the determination that the value of Union Ditch shares to the city should be considered commensurate with the cash in lieu value the city places on each share, a value determined by the Regional Water Board as stated in 2023, and again, $2,500 per share. While we could have made a lower bid for the 2 available shares, it's important to remember that the city would not have had the opportunity to increase the bid should our bid fall short. As such, the city bid $2,500 per share for each of the 2 available shares for a total of $5,000. This was included on the expenditure report after the purchase was made. While it is important that we are always fiscally responsible and prudent with ratepayer money, this expense is solely from the Water Enterprise Fund and utilizes money that is budgeted solely for this purpose. It is also important that we ensure the future of the city's drinking water availability through the purchase of Union Ditch shares. If a value of $2,500 per share is assigned, I directed we submit a bid to pay this amount per share, no more and no less. In this particular situation, rather than be potentially outbid by a small amount in an effort to save money that, again, is assigned solely to the purchase of shares and intended to replace the 7.5 shares not provided to the city with the re-subdivision of Willow Creek. This was not money pulled from billing or ratepayer money or money that was necessarily intended as an investment to replace more than the amount of shares paid for by cash in lieu. For example, we didn't intend to purchase future shares at $1,250 per share in order to obtain 15 shares rather than the 7.5 that were lost in the cash in lieu transaction. In closing, it's important to note that the city's position is not to buy up any shares available with no consideration for their future usefulness to the city's water supply and water needs. The city's position is to protect the interest of the water supply and allow for future development. The city takes great pride in the fact that we are currently in a relatively secure position with our potable water supply, a privilege not all communities share. As this is one of our community's most important resources, we cannot understate the value of owning and maintaining control of the shares we believe that we will need for both today and the future. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, there are questions or just discussion amongst the council up here. I know water Water is a pretty hefty issue. And if people have questions, I was just going to ask, I know part of the one agreement for the $2,500 per share, I think, wasn't there like a rider attached to that we could increase that annually based on inflation?
That is correct. We can increase it by the annual CIP, I believe, or CPI, I'm sorry,
Okay.
I believe. We did not do that in this case, as we were already discussing with Regional Water, bringing to Regional Water, looking at that cash in lieu agreement again. So we just kept with that 2,500
Yeah.
number.
And that would be something the regional water would have to do to increase that.
That
for
is
the cash
correct.
and loan. Okay.
That was consistent with that, and also with the agreement that we made with Fremont County for the Tappan Pathfinder Park. At that time, the council that was seated then approved taking shares in lieu of cash as part of the TAP fee at $2,500 per share. So we did 2,500 times however many shares we could get toward the TAP fee, and then just took the rest in cash toward the regional water system.
It's my understanding through some of the questions I've asked that being surrounded by larger municipalities, we're one of the, if not the top, community with the most water and secure water shares off the river. Is that, I think somebody said there was one small town that had maybe community-wise in ratio as much as we did. But I think that's been one thing that's been handed down generation to generation here in the town city government, is to protect our water and make sure everybody around here has water enough. And we've always been in conjunction with that with the coal camps. We've always worked as a team on that, so I'm think, explaining it like that makes a lot of sense. We don't have to worry about water like a lot of other people, but we could if we don't take care of it.
Okay, I know, the one thing for me, to me, the elephant in the room is sumo, is a sumo development. It's a large development, and I think back on Pueblo West. I moved here in 1977, or 76, remember driving to Pueblo and going, what are all these streets and road signs out in the middle of nowhere, Pueblo West? And at the very east end of it, there was a golf course. And, I've had some friends, we went out there and golfed around a little bit. And, so we were here through 1980, and when I left in 1980, it was still just dirt roads and road signs out there. We came back in 1985, and there was a little bit of development closer to Pueblo. And then all of a sudden, it just exploded. And Pueblo West has grown to the way it is right now. But it hasn't grown without a lot of growing pains, and almost everything centers around water. I know they've had a couple times where they've had slowdowns, they've had building moratoriums. Most recent one was 1922. They've had to go up to Upper Arkansas. They got some water up there, but it's not available for another, for 10 years, because they've got to do all this mitigation of all this property up there before they can get it released to even come down here. So sumo, I could see the same thing happen. Look at what happens in Colorado Springs. That new development southeast of town, way out there, and everybody's going, well, where's the water coming from? And Colorado Springs says, yeah, we'll get the water. Half of it comes from, the new stuff comes from out of the Arkansas River and the southern delivery system going up there. But I think sometimes there's going to be a time when Colorado Springs, enough is enough, we don't have any more water. And developers going to look around and, I wouldn't mind it happening. Somebody go to Jacinto and make an offer you can't refuse and come in and develop sumo. And when they do that, they got that 1.5 cubic feet of water every day, which is like just under 1 million gallons. So if somebody comes in and says, hey, I want to develop this golf course to its full extent and be the best winter golf course in the state of Colorado because we have the best weather, and they start, developing those homes, and when they do that, other developers will come in too, and you know, and the reason they would be able to do that is because of our water portfolio. Because we need to be able to, you know, and we need to think of Florence itself, but when we think of our portfolio and Florence and our Union Ditch shares and all that, we got to think regional water system too. We got to think about the whole area, because we supply all the water for Coal Creek, Williamsburg, Rockville, supply it to the federal correction facility here, supply it to East Florence water system, besides just the city of Florence. We have a great treatment facility for it. The county has, or the Fremont County here, we have a great wastewater treatment plant down at the south end. So we're in a good position. I don't think we need to jeopardize. We need to make sure we hold on to our water shares, and because they are our most valuable asset. So that's my statement on that. I just want to make sure we do things, and any decisions that we make are one, we know what we're talking about, we understand the system, and we do it for the good of the city and the citizens. Any other comments?
I agree.
Okay. All right, thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Okay. Public comment? No one signed up for public comment. Okay, consent agenda. Item number 5, consider approving minutes as written for the last regular city council meeting on January 21st. Consider approving city expenditures, January 23rd in the amount of $234,168.50, and January 30th in the amount of $30,274.19. Approving the annual liquor license renewal for the Florence Elks Lodge 611. And consider approving the special event permit for the Florence Elks Lodge 611 as presented. This time, would anybody on the council want to pull any one of these consent agenda items? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda for the Florence City Council regular meeting of February the 3rd, 2025.
Okay, and the other ones too? You got, for all of them?
Yeah, the consent agenda.
For all
Oh, you want
items?
me to list them?
No, you can just say A, B, C, and D. I read them
A,
out.
B, C, and D.
Okay,
I'll second that.
we have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. New business. Consider adopting an ordinance declaring, establishing, and amending and creating codes, procedures, and policies for administration and personnel, including the city council, city manager, city attorney, municipal courts, purchase of city property and salaries, amending chapters 2.04, 2.08, 2.12, 2.16, 2.40, and 2.244, and repealing chapters 2.22, 2.28, 2.32, 2.34, 2.36, 2.48, 4.50, 2.51, 2.52 of Title II. Administration and Personnel of the Florence, Colorado Municipal Code, and amending or repealing all ordinances or regulations not in conformity herewith. City Manager.
So this is the first of your holistic code review that we've been talking about for some time. We had done some code revisions on Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals previously, so that does not affect those, even though they are in Title II. They're excluded from this ordinance. They are Chapter 2.20 and 2.25, so you can see they're not listed in there. But everything else in Title II has undergone some revision or removal. Most of it was really housekeeping. It was to update language. It was to update to statute, because we are a statutory city. So we follow Colorado statute. Regardless of what is in your code, we're bound by the statute. So we work to find the items that most commonly come up, either with the city council's questions, with questions from the public, or with questions from staff, so that they would be easier to reference. But we're still bound to that statute. So the whole statute isn't in here. You're still bound to it, but just the items that are most commonly relevant. And as a side note, even if those were to be removed from the code, you would still be bound to them, because we are a statutory city. Other changes were updating language. Some of this was from the 1950s, so we thought it was time for an update. Updating to reflect actual practices, responsibilities, and just trying to make it flow a little better because the code was actually electronically codified not too terribly long ago. And what happens when you do that, so your code is originally just a book of paper ordinances, and you do one right after the other, and you create a book of paper ordinances. Then you electronically codify it, and they make all these titles and chapters, and they make it really nice, and you put it on the website. And that's when you start doing the process of, instead of passing just ordinances, then we move to code revision, because we're going to look at the title and how do we revise it to get rid of redundancies, old language, things that contradict one another, and just to make it flow a lot better and more smoothly. So I included the council action form, a list of changes in brief, a list of changes in detail, and your proposed ordinance. And there is an issue, looks like I made a little typo on your suggested, it will be on your suggested motion, that 4.50 should be 2.50 on there. But other than that,
Okay.
be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. But first, since this is a new business item, I'd like to open it up to the public. If anybody has any comments or questions they'd like to make at this time, the podium is open for that. All right. Questions from the council?
I had some questions. I went in and talked to the principals involved in this, and all of them were taken care of, so I have no questions tonight.
I'd like to thank you for all the work on this because you gave it to us in 3 different ways, and it was pretty clear. You know, I do have one question in regard to, you know, we repealed, you know, the proposal here is to repeal the tree committee because it's not required by statute. But we could form it again by resolution. You know, I guess we'd have to talk about that process and how that would work. I'm just kind of I mean, that may be a conversation for outside of today, but I'm just.
Yes, if the council was interested in forming any boards or committees, what I would suggest in the future is perhaps creating like a master resolution that governs all boards and committees that are not statutory, like Planning Commission, BOZA, and I believe Historic Preservation are all statutory. So they do belong in code because they meet with statute. But anything else under that, you may want to form like a master resolution and then make resolutions with bylaws for each one. Or there's several ways of doing that. But I think you touch on an important point, Mayor, that one of the main tenets of this is you see several things removed because it says basically that it doesn't belong in the code. It's making sure that we're not doing with an ordinance what we can do with a resolution, that we're not doing with a resolution what we can do with policy. Basically, the form of least resistance to make it easiest for the organization to remain nimble and change and not have to undergo a code revision every time we want to make a minor change to something, especially things that don't belong in the code. But maybe we're put in there because that was the way it was done in 1950 when it was originally put into the code. So just kind of cleaning some of that up. And it brings up that you see that some of this belongs in the personnel manual, purchasing policy, city council rules of procedure. Those will all be presented to you in an updated version, either this following meeting in February or the first meeting in March, just making sure this first one passes. And if you want to make any major changes that don't affect that. So those will come to you with their changes.
If I could just to echo all that, but certainly by removing the tree board from the code, we were taking no stance on should there be or should there not be a tree board, just that it shouldn't be in the code. To Amy's point, it's much harder to change code. You got to read it twice, etc. So if there's something that doesn't have to be in there, not having it in there is advantageous.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the council? Hearing none, do we have a motion to consider this adoption.
All right, I'd like to make a motion. Okay. Adopt ordinance number 1-2025, an ordinance declaring, establishing, amending, and creating codes, procedures, and policies for administration and personnel, including the city council, city manager, city attorney, municipal courts, purchase of city property, and salaries, amending chapters 2.04, 2.08, 2.12, 2.16, 2.4, and 2.44, and repealing chapters 2.22, 2.28, 2.32, 2.34, 2.36, 2.48, 2.5, 2.51, 2.52, and of Title II. Administration and personnel of the Florence City Municipal Code, and amending or repealing all ordinances or regulations not in conformity herewith.
Second.
We have a second? All right, roll call, please.
Counselor Stone,
Yes.
Counselor Stiefel,
Yes.
Counselor Mergelman,
Yes.
Counselor Gardner,
Yes.
Mayor Wolf.
Yes. All right, council reports. Matt,
No report.
Rudel.
I attended the Fremont Economical Development Corporation annual banquet. I sit on that board, and there were several of us there. Florence was well represented and well noticed during the banquet, which was held here at Pathfinder Park. It was I thought they did a nice job of putting that on. When I first was put on the council here, I got put on the county planning commission. And when I went on there, one of the big things that was hanging over their head was this, the commissioners had given them the job to rewrite all the zoning and ordinances and stuff. And they had already been working on that. And then they gave us a catch up on what all was going on, and it was a massive job. And they had a staff of a lot of people, and they had a considerable amount of time to do it. And it made me aware of how long and how tedious and how tough it is to do what we just approved here. To go through that stuff, detail by detail, catch it up to date, match it with other ordinances and other statutory, the state laws against ours, clear back to 1950. That's almost as old as I am. And I'm very impressed with that. And I want to thank Amy and whoever her constituents were. I think Dan had quite a bit to do with it and stuff. That's an incredible job for the amount of time you worked on it. Thank you.
Brenda?
I have nothing other than good job. It was a lot of work.
Tammy?
No reports, but yes, thank you very much.
Mayor's report. Continue to meet with seniors. Coffee chat. A lot of times the chief is there too. And it's, they've been good. They've been productive. One question that comes up, and this I'm going to throw this out, and we don't need an answer now, but just they keep asking is, when will the nonprofits be asked to come in and give their presentation on an update on what they did for the year, and when the next cycle is going to be out? So I'm just going to pass that along to you, and we'll get that. On the 23rd January, I was guest at Rotary, which was interesting. It was a lot of fun to go there. The one thing that did come up was the Duck Derby and the future of that. Making sure there was water in the ditch, and so there's some issues that came up with that also, and those are being worked at another end that doesn't involve our council here. Attended the FEDC banquet also, and I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for sponsoring a table and including the city in that table. It is a good way to network. Met a lot of people and been invited to a few more activities that will see what's going on the outside Lots of things associated with Emerging Campus, but also a few other projects that are going on countywide that Florence may get involved with that will benefit Florence. Met with the Fremont River Corridor Group. That's the name they came up with. This is a real informal group at the moment, but we're looking at having conversations on improving floodplains and flood resiliency within the city. There's an organization called Ducks Unlimited who has somebody who has access to, possibly has access to FEMA funds to help small municipalities with their flood resiliency. And so we've taken the initial conversations on that. I got some information from our city planner beforehand, and I've talked with the city manager and updated them a little bit. And as soon as, I'll be feeding everything their way when I get this. And where it goes from there, I'm not sure, but, that's something we should always look at. Another Arkansas River one, the Minnequaw Dam redesign took the next step forward. Arkansas River Water Coalition covered the match for the preliminary engineering design, working with Evraz to potentially put in a boat ramp and fish ladder on Minnequaw Dam just west of Pathfinder. And again, what excites me about that, I've said it, this will be the third time I've said it up here, is we could extend the Arkansas River water recreation corridor down to Florence and the river park very, very easily, which would be a boon for Florence. I can't remember where I heard this. It may have been at Senior Coffee, but I don't have details. But I think maybe if we can find them and put them on the city website or get them on the Reporter or whatever. But the AARP tax aids is going to be held at Pathfinder Event Center, and they've got specific dates to help people with their taxes. So that's a good thing. And then last of all, I want to congratulate the 2024 Reader's Choice Award winners for Florence. Best Bar, Florence Brewery. Best Breakfast, Copper Kettle. Best Dinner, Quincy's. The Best New Business, Bigfoot, Sunday, and Outpost. I haven't been there, but I'm curious now, so I'm going to have to go try it out. The Best Business to Purchase Items, I think it was something like that, was Trending on Main. And last but not least, the best community event was the City of Florence for their Wet and Dry Parade. Okay. All right, so that's my report. City Manager.
You all have probably heard me talk enough, but I will answer your question regarding the nonprofits.
Okay.
So end of first quarter, but beginning of second quarter. So we'll probably invite them to the first meeting in April to give presentations. We'll be sending those out to everyone who was awarded something. And then after that, we'll open up the application period, try and keep it open for a longer time. And then don't know exactly when we'll close it. We're still putting together the budget calendar for 2025 for putting the 2026 budget together, but it will coincide with that.
Okay. All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions on the mayor's report that we have in front of us here? So it looks like the purchasing and personnel policies next meeting,
Yes, they are scheduled for the next meeting.
and the street needs assessment.
Yes, we are hoping to get that all put together by the next meeting. That is my very big hope. I think we will get there. If not, it will go on the first meeting in March.
Okay, very good, thank you. City Attorney.
Not a whole lot. I think I updated you a little bit on the Black Hills rate case. That's proceeding, but no new major developments there. Rudel stole a lot of my thunder, but I wanted to give Amy giant kudos. My role was easy. I got to review the thing. She did all the heavy lifting, and you guys latched on to the fact that it's very tedious. It is not fun. It's not fun to come to work and know that that's what you're going to do for a couple hours or a couple days or a couple weeks. you know, we have a lot of clients, and one of the things we always recommend is that, hey, you should look at your code and update it and make changes. And almost no clients take us up on that offer. I didn't even offer it. Amy just did it of her own volition. So a lot of credit there. You guys saw how hard it was just to read the ordinance. She had to write it and put together, you know, something that's easy to understand both for you and the public. So just wanted to give her extra credit on that. But that's all from me.
Chief Humphrey, anything? Okay, thank you. Anybody have any requests for executive session? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned at 7:08.